lineup-wise, when this lineup came out before the USA-Jamaica game from Mauricio Pochettino in his first, well, competitive game, because this is Nations League, I don't think that it raised a lot of eyebrows. There were plenty of usual suspects. I do think that there was a question before the game started as to how they would line up with the personnel. Matt Turner in goal, Joe Scally on the right, Jedi Robinson on the left, center back tandem of Tim Ream and Mark McKenzie. And then in the midfield, Weston McKennie, Tanner Tessman, and Johnny Cardoso. Three players up top, at least on the lineup. Christian Pulisic on the left, Yunus Musa on the right. Ricardo Pepi gets the start up in that striker position. Again, I don't think that everybody looked at this and said, "Wow, this is incredible." If Tyler Adams were here, he certainly would be, I think, in the midfield. And if Tim Weah were here, I certainly think that he would play. Gio Reyna, who knows where he fits in going forward, but certainly a strong lineup, certainly enough to take on the likes of Jamaica, albeit in Jamaica. When I looked at this, Mosse, there was a question at the beginning as to whether this was going to be a back four or a back three. Certainly, at times, Jedi Robinson on that left-hand side, as we've seen him in the past, was pushed way up, so it kind of did become a back three. But I think it was oftentimes a back four. I will say that as Jedi Robinson on the left-hand side got pushed up, it did produce a problem that I think a lot of people are talking about, and that is whether Tim Ream, when he gets strung out, either in space or with somebody that is faster than him, is it problematic when they do kind of fall into that three in the back? I will say this: while Matt Turner saved a penalty tonight, I do think that there is still questions about what Matt Turner is in this version of him in 2024 and going forward, and I do think that there is competition at the goalkeeper position. I don't think that Mark McKenzie is good enough. I think he is adequate, but we don't need adequate in order to do great things in 2026. The same can be said, I think, for Joe Scally. I think Tim Ream, the problem is that when he gets strung out, when it is one-on-one, when it is a speed factor, it is scary to me. And against Jamaica, at times, he got exposed, but against better teams, I think it could be problematic. Mosse, before we get into the midfield, initial thoughts on the lineup?
Yeah, as you mentioned, at times it played like a back three, at times it played like a back four, but either way, Musa was playing down that right flank. So that's clearly where Pochettino sees him right now, which I find interesting. I do like the freedom he's giving Pulisic to drift into the middle of the field. He's finding a lot of space there, including for the goal today. And then obviously, Pepi making the most of his start up top. But I guess I've skipped ahead to the midfield and attack, and you wanted me to just focus on defense, right?
Well, anything from a defensive standpoint other than the possible three or back four and the good and the bad that comes with that?
No, I thought Matt Turner had a good night. Not only the penalty save, but also incredible save to deny an Olympico in the second half.
Yep.
I do think Jamaica should have had another penalty in that sequence. I do think Tim Ream blocked it with his arm. The U.S. got a bit of a break there.
I mean, that was like your proverbial chicken wing, right? I mean, that thing, he even almost exaggerated it. I was like, Tim, don't do it. Don't draw attention to it. He kind of lifted up his arm. And yeah, it was borderline in terms of where the handball would be or wouldn't be, but it would not have surprised me in the least if that had actually been called a handball. So I think I got away with something. You mentioned Yunus Musa as we get into the midfield and into the attack. I don't care how much Pochettino or anybody else out there believes that Yunus Musa is a winger. You cannot convince me that Yunus Musa is best served on the U.S. men's national team playing out there on the wing. At times, he looks completely lost. I don't think that he has the speed and the quickness to consistently cause problems out there on the right side. I did like the way that Christian Pulisic drifted in at times in that, quasi 10 position, and obviously it resulted in the goal. And Ricardo Pepi, I thought he was good, not great. He didn't take his goal well, but you know what? They don't ask how, they only ask how many, and he got his chance and he scored a goal. But, he topped it, but it still went in. I actually thought that Weston McKennie was the best of the front, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players that were up there. I thought he was just smooth. I thought he was confident, and I thought he was vital in terms of the performance tonight.
And what was interesting about that was at the outset, it looked like McKennie was going to be playing further up the field with Tessman and Johnny Cardoso sitting. And then Johnny got hurt, and Pochettino brought on Malik Tillman to replace him, which meant Weston had to assume greater defensive responsibilities. And I agree with you. He did a very good job.
Christian Pulisic. right now playing at the top of his game. We have the debate and the fun type of talk about where he sits in the pecking order of great players, not just great American players, not just great players in Italy, but where he sits right now. He was obviously targeted. Anybody that plays the U.S. with a Christian Pulisic on the field is going to be wary of what he can do. Not a game that we're going to put up there in terms of top five that he has played, but his movement I thought was good. And as I mentioned on the goal, him coming inside, dipping the shoulder, getting the space, and then more importantly, playing that ball. I did think in the first, I don't know, 10 minutes of the game, the US had a lot of possession. They didn't necessarily go anywhere, but there was a lot of possession. I know on my feed over here on the X machine, there were a lot of people that were commenting on the state of the field that they played on. Yeah, it wasn't great, and even within the bad conditions of the field, I thought it was really good in the way that the U.S. maintained possession, in the way that they didn't panic. Sometimes it was risky, but I think that there was a confidence in the way that they played the ball around, especially in that first 10 minutes, and it kind of set the tone for this game.
Yeah, and in addition to the Pepe goal, you had a great chance with Anthony Robinson in the box, and it did look in the opening minutes like this was going to be a wide open game, and the U.S. was going to have a lot of space and was going to be able to create chances. And then the penalty Jamaica got, even though they missed it, Matt Turner saving from Damari Gray, that signaled a momentum shift in the game. And I thought from that point forward, Jamaica was on the front foot. The U.S. was kind of holding on, and it ended up being almost kind of a smash and grabby, ugly win at the end. Which was interesting the way the game started because you kind of thought it might be headed in a different direction.
Yeah, and in that penalty that ultimately Matt Turner saved, and to your point, it was a really good save. I thought that was one where I thought it was a good penalty. I mean, I guess a good penalty is one that goes in. So in that sense, it wasn't a good penalty. But I thought he struck it well, and I thought that Matt Turner was really quick off his line, fairly off his line, and made a really good save. So well done to Matt Turner. And I think Matt Turner kind of needed that moment for his confidence, because I'm certainly feels that there is competition with what's going on and the fact that he's not playing over in Europe. And while he isn't the incumbent, there are other folks out there. The Tim Ream situation. I mean, if we could just bottle Tim Ream's ability on the ball with the physical prowess of I don't know a Richards, who we didn't see tonight, or somebody else out there, then you would have the perfect player. But you can never have the perfect player. He got spun like a top on the top of the box that ultimately resulted in the penalty. And look, Richards or McKenzie or any center back, certainly that could happen to him. But again, these moments when he gets strung out, when there's space, it's I think it lends to the conversation that we're having as to, can Tim Ream be a starter relative to 26? And if you don't believe that, then why are we wasting time with him at this point?
Yeah, that was Shamar Nicholson who spun him. Jamaica have some players, Leon Bailey, Damari Gray,
Yep.
as I mentioned. They're now managed by Steve McLaren, former England boss, which is interesting. So I'm curious to see where the reggae boys go the rest of the cycle. But I want to ask you about this because I was grappling with this all game long. We know ultimately what matters is the World Cup. But
Mm-hmm.
to what degree are we judging every match until then through that lens? Or are we judging it in the context of the competition the U.S. is in? Because a 1-0 result away from home in a first leg and a two-legged tie is a good result, and the U.S. is now well positioned to advance to the Nations League Final Four. But are you viewing it through that mindset, or do you think Pochettino should be treating these games almost as friendlies in terms of wanting to get a look at different players and different formations and not worrying so much about the game situation? Are you okay with the U.S. bunkering down in the last few minutes of that game to try to hold on to that result? Or no, at this point, almost every game between now and the World Cup should be viewed through the context of preparing for the World Cup?
Mosse, barring Pochettino going on a coast-to-coast killing spree, there is not a chance in hell that he is going to get fired before the 26 World Cup. That is, and I don't say this in a flip way, that is all that matters. That is going to be his legacy. And let's be honest, that is why he was hired. Now, those of us, whether it's you and I, fans, everybody out there looking at this team, we are going to criticize and critique and judge him relative to the games leading up. But ultimately, I want the best possible version of this team in the summer of 2026. I don't want it in the summer of 24. I don't want it in the summer of 25. And I know we have Gold Cup, and those are important. But to your point, I am only looking at it relative to 2026. And so when I see them play a team like Jamaica, who at times has given us trouble, but when I see them play a team like Jamaica and get a road result in a difficult environment, yes, I pat them on the back, but not too much, because it's still Jamaica. And ultimately, Pochettino has been brought in to do things that we haven't done before. And I didn't see anything tonight that leads me to believe that this is a team that is any different. Had this performance happened under Greg Berhalter, I don't think anybody would have said that it looks any different. This is what this team is. Now, excuse me, it might change as we go forward. But right now, looking at this team, I'm glad they got the result, because I think that's important to recognize that, you know what, you can be ruthless. And I don't think they were as ruthless as they needed to be tonight, but ultimately they held on for the win. But it's still not at a point where I'm looking at this team and saying, oh my God, you are going to do things in 2026 that we have not seen before.
Yeah, I'm just curious, late in this game, as Pochettino started making subs, was that strategic to try to get a result in this game, or is he still in this mode of just wanting to get a look at different players? So I just wonder how he's approaching it.
I think he recognizes that he has a very long leash. I also think he recognizes the priority of the World Cup. And it's not that he doesn't want to win. And that's why, for example, the Tim Ream question, would we better be served by having somebody else get those minutes? I don't know. Excuse me. I'm having a frog in my throat here. I'm at the one of the casinos here, Mosse.
Yeah.
And they smoke here. There's smoking all over the place. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, anything else on this game, Mosse?
No. So leg 2 now is Monday in St. Louis. The U.S. In good shape to advance. They're chasing a fourth straight CONCACAF Nations League title. We know the Final Four is at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles next year, so we hope they're in it. But yeah, I assume you now fully expect the U.S. to go on to advance.
Yeah, I do. And that will mark the return of Tim Weah, too. So we'll see how he fits into the equation here. Obviously, with Johnny coming out and Malik coming in, there could be some changes here or there. But if you're Jamaica, it's still plenty to play for. But I would still expect the U.S. to come back and have a much more dominant performance in the second game. I would obviously like them to score more goals. Before we leave, though, we've talked a lot over the last months about Pepi and the super sub status that he has occupied. And, he got his opportunity here. Josh Sargent is hurt. Balogun is hurt. And I think he took it. Even though he didn't take his goal well, he still finished it. And I think there was some question as to, can he only come into a game and affect it in a substitute role? Well, I think he kind of put that to bed. But I did like the way that he held the ball up. I did like the way that he came back and provided an option up top. And I'm not saying that a Balogun or a Sargent couldn't do that, but he was more involved than I thought he was going to be. And ultimately, the most important thing for a striker is scoring goals. And even if they're ugly, you will still take that. And so I think all in all, a good performance from Pepi, which makes me feel better if and when he is given the start, that he can do good things as opposed to just coming off the bench in that substitute role.
And did you see, he said he hates being called a super sub. And there are all sorts of rumors about his club future. Fabrizio Romano posting about it. So, yeah, I don't think he's going to stick around PSV much longer in this role. He wants to go somewhere where he can start.
Yeah, obviously. You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops twice a week right here on my very own YouTube page. The only way to stay up to date is to hit that subscribe button down below. Size the day, and see you soon.